My name is Richard Ferrer, and I can say I am cloud hired.
That yes, come and join and get cloud hired. I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
Hey, Go Cloud Architect family, I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired, guys.
So I'll just say I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired thanks to Go Cloud Architects.
It worked for me, and now I'm cloud hired. Because of Go Cloud Architect program, I am cloud hired. See!
I am cloud hired. Thank you, Mike and the Glowcloud team.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Michael Gibbs. I'm joined here with Alonzo Coleman, a great cloud architect and our chief marketing officer. And we're here today to help you build your best cloud computing career. Maybe your goal is to become a cloud architect or a solutions architect or an AI architect or a security architect or a cloud security architect. That's why we're here to help you build your career. I've now been working in technology now for over 25 years as an architect. A network architect, an enterprise architect, a business architect, you name it, all the architects. And I've spent more than 2 decades helping people just like you get their first tech job, get promoted in tech. And we've gotten 9 people hired in the last 2 weeks. And I want you to have the same level of success in your life. And that's why we're here. So ask us your career questions. Before we begin, I'd like to tell you about something that I am really excited about. David Lithicum, who was Deloitte's head of cloud strategy, who's been working in AI since the 1980s, and I have co-created an AI architect program, and we're going to have a free webinar about it tomorrow. And we're going to talk about the role, we're going to talk about the skills you need, and both David and I, who together have almost 60 years architect experience, will answer any questions to help you build your career. It's completely free. So go out there, come to the webinar. It'll be on Zoom. Ask questions. We'll have a face-to-face conversation with you, and we'll do anything we can to help you get a great AI architect job. And so there's that, and it's going to be tomorrow. So please join us on the webinar, and there's even a document that we can give you on how to get your first AI architect job. But come to the webinar tomorrow. We'll talk. It'll be a face-to-face conversation. I'll be there. David Lithicum will be there. Alonzo will most likely be there as well. So it's going to be a nice, friendly dialogue. So keep track of that. We're going to get to all your questions. Please bring us your questions. Do not be shy. It's a 26-week wait to have a private one-on-one consultation with me. And that's at $1,200 an hour. And, I don't want anybody to have to pay for that. I'm here completely free. So please ask us your questions so we can build your career. Before we begin, Alonzo, would you like to say anything?
Oh, yeah. I've got lots to say. Number one, I am glad to see everyone here. I was not able to because I had a sick son yesterday, but what I saw with David Linthicum and Mike on the ones and twos, I was so excited to see what they were talking about with the generative AI development program and what the tremendous efforts and the tremendous experience that they had combined to bring this to you all. So as of now, we've laid it all out. We've got that program, and we are so stoked and so excited to have been working on that. And as a precursor to that, we are offering 50% off on a pre-sale for you all to join this AI development, generative AI development program. So you think about these two powerhouses who have been a part of AI, specifically David and what he's contributed in all spans of the cloud computing in AI space, along with Mike's experience in cloud computing. He's done it, been there, done that. So imagine the value, imagine the wisdom, imagine all the skills that you can bring to bear for your career with this development program. So please, we're here to answer all your questions. We're excited about this.
Yeah.
So let's fire away, Mike.
And before we get to the first question, bring us your questions, please. Here's the reason why. I made it to principal architect status in less than 2 years. And the reason was not because there's anything so special about me, because I went to the VP of architecture and said, what do you want in a principal architect? And he told me. 2 years later, I was there instead of the normal 15 to 20 years. And, you know, I work with people who have spent 15 and 20 years making errors, trying to learn, making errors, trying to learn. And at some point they get there, but it could take them decades when you could probably get there in 6 months to 18 months if you know where to go and how to get there. So please don't be shy, ask your questions. So Tyrone, bring in the questions.
All right, Yoshida, how can I build architecture diagram from AWS Data Lake? Which is the task assigned to me? Tried searching on NetBT, still confused about it. How should I proceed with doing architecture for Data Lake?
Yeah, Yoshida, we have to understand what kind of architecture diagram you're supposed to create. And you know, you mentioned Data Lake, but there's lots of architecture diagrams. Some diagrams relate to the business process, which you also have to create. How will that organization leverage that data? Meaning, your creation of a data lake, will that affect the way certain people work? It will, absolutely. So you might be asked to actually create a business process, for example, about that data lake. How will that data lake affect the way salespeople work, marketing people work? It could also be related to inferences. Is that data lake going to be used from some type of machine learning? And will that be used to make predictions? And how will those predictions be used by the business? That is one form of architectural design that you would do for a data lake related to the business process. The next type of architecture diagram you could be creating is something that explains how it works. Most big businesses are not going to use AWS Data Lake. They're going to create their own data lake on AWS or Azure or in their data center. And that typically means they're going to have something like a relational database, and they're typically going to have a NoSQL database, and they're typically going to have a data warehouse. And then typically they're going to have to take that data and normalize that data. Meaning Mike Gibbs could be all caps, or it could be capital M for Mike and then all lowercase Gibbs, or it could be capital M-I-K, capital M-I-K-E, and then capital G, lowercase G-I-B-B-S. So we're going to have to do some normalization, which is typically called mapping and reduction. So you might have your relational database and have someone from your organization write a Python Spark script to take that data from the relational database and then move that into data storage, which is going to be object storage. We might also typically have that then data that's sitting in the NoSQL database, write another Python Spark script, and then dump that data into object storage. And it'll be in object storage because object storage has metadata. And then we would do that same thing where we would take that data warehouse, often Postgres in most organizations, but there's other data warehouses that are there as well. We're going to take that data, map and reduce that data with a Python Spark script, and then put it in object storage. Now, once it's in object storage, it still is going to be needed to be massaged a little bit, that data. And then that data will be cataloged and massaged and cleaned up and normalized again, maybe even a Python Spark script in some way, shape, or form, because they may have data in object storage. And that's going to then go quickly to another part of object storage, now where the raw data is going to be there. So you have that. And then after that, they're probably going to catalog the data. And now you're going to create the data in a cleaned up area of storage called the data lake. But that might not be enough. Remember, people don't create data lakes just for the fun of it. They create data lakes to do something. So now you have that data lake, and then where's it going? Is it going to machine learning? Is it going to be using something like a TensorFlow or a PyTorch or even a pre-made cloud thing? And you're going to have to document that. And then you're really going to document where it goes. And you might even have a data visualization tool. So it's really going to be 100% related to the way it's actually used. And unfortunately, what you're asking is a question that is a very valued question, but you need to learn what it is. So I'm going to tell you this. We have a video from my friend Praveen. Praveen was a big data, and it's on our channel. Tyrone or someone in the background, can you get him that video? Praveen was a big data architect for many years. Praveen actually came to us, and he wanted to become a cloud architect, and we trained him to be a cloud architect, and he got a great job as a cloud architect over at JP Morgan Chase, which he loves. But he has such knowledge on data lakes. We've got about a 2-hour video where I asked him about data lakes and he diagrammed some data lakes. I'd like you to look at that. But you please do ask your manager what kind of diagram. Are they looking at a low-level diagram where you're going to get all kinds of geeky with all the tech stuff? Are they looking at an architectural flow diagram, which is going to be very high level? Or are they going to be looking for an architectural diagram which includes the business processes and how it's going to affect the business? In my world, I have to create all three for every single one. But if you don't know what somebody wants, chances are if you deliver it, it may not be right. So go ask them what kind of a document are you looking for. Are you looking for something related to the big data and the business processes that we use? Are you looking for a high-level document, or are you looking for a low-level document that's going to include the exact names of the databases that you're using and get deep? And if you're getting deep on these databases and you've got a database and it's got multiple partitions in there and other things, you're going to have to get that there too. So you may have to learn a little bit about data, a little bit about databases, a little bit about relational databases, NoSQL databases, data lakes, database scaling, Python Spark scripts, for mapping and reduction and object storage along the way. But I tell you, it's a good experience and I'm thrilled you're using it. I hope that actually helps.
From Cloud Station. Hi, Mike. How can AI help us design better architectures? It can be wrong at times, true, but how does it help in this regard?
Cloud Station, AI cannot help us design cloud architectures at all. AI can do engineering functions like write a Python script, or write a Terraform script, or write a Bash shell script. But AI can't get involved in the architecture at all, and here's the reason why. So McKinsey says that most cloud architectures are disasters. McKinsey said that 70% of technology projects fails. CIO magazine says that over 50% of all cloud architectures are a disaster. And here's the reason why. The architecture is bad. I mean, the tech works, that's nothing, but it doesn't drive any transformation. It doesn't make the business. And Cloud Station, imagine spending $1 billion and getting nothing for it. You know, if I were to spend $50,000 on something and I got nothing, I'd be pretty angry. And that's the way most companies are. So let's really talk about architecture and why AI can't do any of the architect's job. Here's the thing about architecture. It all starts with the business goals. We can't think about tech until we know what we're trying to achieve. That would be like a doctor saying, here's the yellow pill, Mr. Patient. I don't know why you're sick. I don't know what you need, but here's the yellow pill. Believe me, it's going to make you feel good. Now, that might work for the drug dealer on the corner, but that's not going to work for a physician that's trying to change lives. So I want you to think about this. First, we need to understand the business vision. And how do you understand the business vision in Cloud Station? You go out there and you talk to the company's executives, their CEO, their chief financial officer, their chief information officer, the chief information security officer, the chief operating officer. You need to speak to all of them and you need to understand the vision for the business, especially that CEO, because they're the strategists for that business. And you need to understand where that business wants to be 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 6 years from now, and even 16 years from now. Because the way you design your architecture is going to make that transformation of that business or that growth possible or not possible. And all that is, mind and communication. So that's going to require a lot of soft skills, a lot of communication skills, and a whole lot of business knowledge, because you can't improve a business that you don't understand. The next thing you need to understand is you need to understand how that company operates. How are the products made? How are the services delivered? How does customer service? How does the marketing organization work? How do the sales reps do their thing? You must understand that business. In fact, I was speaking to an architect of mine that I just trained that got a job in a major governmental organization, and it was his first tech job. And he's saying, Mike, he said, you're right. I've been in nothing other than meetings for the last 2 weeks. He said, it's all about obtaining information, soft skills, communication skills, just like you taught me. He said, I haven't even seen any tech yet. I'm like, you're not going to see one for a long period of time. Sorry, that's my Apple AI that's going a little haywire with these things. I must have had a thumbs up or something that I don't even know about. So there's that. So now he needs to understand, or you need to understand the business processes, because in your architecture, if you don't re-architect the business processes to make the business operate better, basically your technology project's going to be a disaster. And that's why, these techie frameworks to teach you how to just put the tech in there create architectural problems if you don't address these things. Now, Only then, Cloud Station, once we know the vision of the business and the ideal business processes we've worked with the organization to help redesign, now we can start thinking about the tech. And we're going to have to figure out the actual tech. We're going to go in there with some engineers. We're going to learn about the tech. We're going to do all kinds of things to learn the tech. And then we're going to go build a team of the right engineers and architects to design the new solution that are going to fit those optimized business processes for those business goals. Now that could be 3 to 6 months of conversations just to do it. And here's why we have to be so careful. Every change we make to the business can either help the business or hurt the business. Now remember, most cloud architectures fail. Most technology projects fail, and because businesses don't actually do these things. So now we've got to understand that. Now, when we're doing that and we're selecting our technology, we must understand that every technology has a trade-off. If I use this technology, it will help this, but it's going to hurt this. If we do it this way, it'll help this, but complicate this. If we do this, it'll improve freedom, but damage security. So now we got to think about the entire business and then choose our technologies, because each one is a trade-off. We're going to help something and hurt something with every technology choice. Then as architects, we've got to go document the architecture, write up that architecture, and now we got to go sell it to the organization stakeholders. That means the C-suite, that means the CIO as well, that means department heads and other key stakeholders, because if they don't adopt the architecture, it won't work in the business. So that's the next thing. We will also have to look at the organization's sophistication. Can they manage the architecture if we design it? Do they have the people that can actually maintain the architecture? What kind of people do we need to bring in for them to manage the architecture? And do we need to train people? So then there's that. Then we need to create a statement of work for the architecture. And then after that, we need to determine it's a governance strategy. Which people are going to lead this project? Because once we architects design the project, we're off on a new one. We're not there. We don't build it. We don't touch the technology. So that's really what goes on with it. So AI can't do any of that. AI can't have any of these conversations and do it. So AI for the architect is really just, a new tool that we can use to optimize the business. More jobs for AI, but AI is not going to be there. And we can't even use AI as architects to do research because it's got a 30% chance of being wrong. Yeah. And we can't make decisions on bad information, and 30% wrong means 3 out of 10 times it's going to fail. Now, if you went to a doctor and 30% of the time they killed somebody, you wouldn't go back to that doctor, right? And as architects, we can't be there. Our job is the most strategic, critical position in the world. Why? If we don't set the strategy right, it doesn't work. Now, that doesn't mean we're more important than engineers, because if they don't build it, we've got nothing. The architects don't touch the technology. But creating that strategy is the most critical thing to ensure success. Hope I answered your question there, Cloud Station. And others, please ask your questions.
It's a good response. Yeah, you think about out of every 10 people, 30% won't make the getting off the operating table from a doctor or whatever. So yeah, it's understand that AI for everyone. It's not this genie that creates something out of nothing. This is based off of large language models and hopefully great information, positive, pure, and factual, actual information that it can disseminate from. So if it's poor information, garbage in, garbage out. So understanding that you cannot replace innovation, strategy, human intelligence, emotional intelligence, and so forth to create innovative architecture. You can use AI as a tool, but as a replacement, that is something that's not going to happen. We're going to need humans for a very long time to get this accomplished.
Yes.
Back to Cloud Station. AI is becoming more and more advanced. Where does this put our other cloud career paths when compared to cloud AI architecture?
This is really a good question. How does AI affect certain jobs? For jobs like the architect, it creates a tremendous number of new jobs. And why is that, Cloud Station? Because companies hire architects to find ways to leverage technology to boost their business performance. So generative AI is a new tool, more jobs for the architects. Jobs, because they need a person to do just what I told you about a minute ago. Go in there and find the business strategy, find the business processes, and map technology to a business solution. So for the architect, AI is a boom. Now, For software engineers, AI is the curse of death for at least the bottom 50 to 60%. And here's the reason why. AI can already write code. Writing code is not that challenging for generative AI because it's not manually intervened. So AI can write code right now as good as the bottom 30 to 50% of all software engineers. It can't come close to the top. So for people that are going to be software developers, they better be the best of the best of the best. And that means having extraordinary skill if they're going to survive. Because I agree with the CEO of NVIDIA that a lot of software developers will be losing their job, and it saddens me. Now, let's talk about the job of a cloud engineer. AI can write a Python script. AI can write a Terraform script. AI can write a Bash shell script. AI can write a Windows PowerShell script, or a Terraform, or CloudFormation, or any of it. So that is really scary for the cloud engineers. In fact, we had a great cloud engineering program, and we stopped selling about a year and a half ago, because I didn't want to sell a program where I wasn't thrilled on the career. I love cloud engineers. I'm an architect, and I design something, and the engineers are the best techie experts that we have in the world, and the engineers go build it. And if the engineers didn't build it, there'd be nobody to take my designs and turn them into reality. But, and here's the big but, organizations are going to look to maximize profitability. And how do they maximize profitability? They increase the productivity of their employees, and they get rid of employees that are unnecessary while they try to increase sales. So AI will help those companies make better predictions so they can sell more, optimize their supply chain so they can have lower inventory costs, but it's going to put them in a position where, unfortunately, many of the engineers will struggle. So how does a cloud engineer not get laid off from AI? First, we have to understand, I truly believe the bottom 50% of cloud engineers will be laid off by AI. So here, don't be the bottom 50%, be a great engineer. And how does somebody become a great engineer? They don't get 10 certifications in 10 other people's careers. They master those skills of the cloud engineer. They get really good at learning those network and data center concepts. They get really good at, say, Python scripting. They get really good at Linux scripting, really good at Linux administration, really good at Windows administration, and really good at infrastructure as code. Then they develop their communication skills so they get the right information and can communicate to make less errors. Then that engineer builds their communication skills, their presentation skills. Why? So they'll be able to educate other engineers and bring them better. And if they learn how to sell and increase their business acumen, they'll have the opportunity to move into sales engineering roles, which again cannot be affected by AI. And why? Because the sales engineers got to go talk to the client, they're customer facing, they're going to be taking the client to lunches and dinners and drinks, maybe be playing golf with the client, so those engineers are going to be fine. DevOps engineers, pretty scary. A lot of DevOps engineers do a lot of automation, and a lot of automation can be there. So the same thing for the DevOps engineers. Don't be in the bottom 50%. Be the best of the best of the best, and that means time, effort, focus, and learning every single day. So either take extra care for the engineers or get out of engineering and move into a customer-facing role like sales, a cloud architect, an AI architect, a network architect, an enterprise architect, or even a sales engineer. But those post-sales, back behind the scenes roles are pretty scary with what AI can do with them. Hope I answered your question at Cloud Station. If you're here, please ask questions so Alonzo I can help you build a career. Don't be shy. We're not scary.
Anjali, hey, well, I'm so glad to see you. We've had a conversation or two, haven't we? The question is from her, when to make a business continuity plan on cloud? What are areas one must never lose focus on, specifically when you are not on managed service contractor with a cloud provider?
Well, Anjali, first, I love the cat. I don't know how you put a mask on the cat. My cat, Cindy, would not tolerate that at all, but it's a cute cat, and I love cats. So you always need a business continuity plan on the cloud. It doesn't matter if it's managed or unmanaged. In fact, when you're not on the cloud, you still need a business continuity plan. Here's something. Every business needs a business continuity plan. What is a business continuity plan? If something bad happens to the business, how will that business survive it? So it doesn't even matter if you're in tech. A business continuity plan, let's say you're a non-tech enabled business, right? And the business sells, I don't know, auto repair stuff. and the business has 50 people that actually deliver auto parts, and in addition to the 50 people that deliver auto parts, they've got 20 or 30 or 40 sales reps, and they've got some behind the scenes people in accounting. What happens if there's a pandemic and they can no longer drop off those parts? How does that business survive? If it can't sell, it's going to die. And that business will be bankrupt so fast, which will be an absolute nightmare. So that business will always need a business continuity plan. So let's talk about what you need to think of. How do you make that business operate under worst case scenarios? An earthquake, a fire, the cloud provider dying because the cloud provider had a massive network attack, or they had a security event, or a control plane failure, and the entire cloud, no matter how many regions and availability zones, is gone. So it has nothing to do with the cloud provider. It always has to do with things. So what goes into business continuity planning? The first thing I need to figure out is maximum tolerable downtime. And that doesn't just mean the tech, it means downtime to the business as well. The maximum tolerable amount of downtime is the period of downtime where if the business were to cease to function, it would no longer come back as a healthy business. So how do you do that? You got to go to the customers, you got to go to the company's executives. You got to figure out what is the cost of downtime, how much cash they have, what their cash flows are, what their debt payments are, and all of it. Then you need to figure out which processes are mission critical, meaning we can let these things run, but not other these things. Like we can survive without this, but we can't survive without this. Then you got to figure that out. And then you got to run the business calculations of how long can a business survive with basically that. So those are two things. Then in order to do this, we've got to go not only to the C-suite, we've got to go to all the department heads, and we even need to go to the frontline workers. Why? We need to understand their jobs. We need to understand the business processes and all of it in order to understand how that business operates. And then we need to quantify the costs. So for example, what is the expected value of either an opportunity or downtime? And what does that mean? So if we look at a business and we assess that there's, say, a 3% risk that a business will go down per year, because we assume it happens once every 33 years, we can take 3% and we can multiply that times the cost of downtime, and we can calculate the yearly exposure. And then once we've calculated that, we know about how much our budget is to there. So, and Jolly, this is like any other architect thing. It has absolutely nothing to do with how to build the technology. It's all about the business. How does the business run? How does that business operate? Now, this is the kind of thing that typically takes me, 6 to 12 months to fully train an architect, but I love it. You're asking the right questions, but it has nothing to do with cloud computing. It has nothing to do with non-cloud computing. This is mandatory for every single business. So it's been said that destiny favors the prepared, and any good business is going to have a business continuity plan. And that even includes, like, if I walk out and get hit by a bus today, how will the business continue to operate? The employees that I have, what will they run? If I'm not there to teach a course, who could they find to actually teach the course? Because there's very few people that have almost 30 years experience. Maybe a David Lithicum could be a part of a business continuity plan, or someone like that. And then, what do I do how do we keep our students getting hired if I'm not even here because I got hit by a bus? Now, I hope not to get hit by a bus. My wife would be pretty upset by it. My friends would be pretty upset by it. My cat would be devastated by it because I love my cat. But you get the point. Every business needs a business continuity plan. The plans are in the people, the processes, and the technology. Good question.
Diggleman. Hey, Mike, what are the best ways to integrate AI into cybersecurity?
Well, Diggleman, there's a couple ways. So first thing we can do is we can use AI to generate some of the scripts that we can have a penetration tester try to break into our organization and see that it works. We can have penetration testers, you write compelling emails for social engineering and phishing and vishing and all those other flavors of the phishing attacks and try and use that. So on the external side, we can use it to identify more vulnerabilities. Now, let's look at any really good next generation firewall. No, we're not going to secure a cloud environment with a cloud provider's firewall. But if it's an enterprise, we're going to need the industrial stuff. But if we start looking at today's enterprise grade firewalls, what do? Next generation firewalls. Not only do they operate like a normal firewall, where they look at traffic out and let the return traffic in, block all traffic except for that's designed by policies, and even now filter on layer 7 in addition to layers 3 and 4. So a new modern firewall does that. But the intrusion detection, intrusion prevention systems on next generation firewalls, there's really a couple ways we can do it. We can look at a signature. Here's what a signature means, Dingleman. We've got a known attack, and the signature can basically look for a known attack and then stop the attack in its track if it's known. That's great for known attacks, but what happens if it's an unknown attack? Typically, firewalls have used them being pattern matching and heuristic techniques to look for an anomaly. Kind of like you, Dingleman, and I know you. Let's say you decided to go to Dubai next week and spend 10 grand. And the week after that, you went to Hong Kong and spent 10 grand. And then after you left Hong Kong, you went to Brisbane, Australia, maybe Palm Beach, Brisbane, and then you spent 10 grand. And then the week after that, you went over to Nova Scotia. You wanted to get some really good fish, and you wanted to see cold, and you went over there and spent another 10 grand. Your credit card company would say, well, this is not the way Dingleman's normal patterns of behavior are, and it would probably stop you once you tried to spend $10,000 in Dubai. But Dingleman, if you were like me and used to travel like that and that was your work schedule, your credit card companies would recognize it as normal. So that's normally the heuristics they work on. But now a good next generation firewall will also be using AI. And it'll go through AI. And now think about it. It's now going to be able to use AI to recognize new attacks that it's never seen before and thwart attacks in its track. So we've got some AI in our next generation firewalls. Great question. Now let's think about the logging we get. You know, we're getting logs from everything. Logs from our Linux systems, our virtual machines, logs from our Windows systems, logs from our routers, our switches, our firewalls, and pretty much every silly thing we use is going to generate logs, right? Now we can take these logs and we can actually run some machine learning on these logs or AI on these logs, and we can use the logs to better correlate things with artificial intelligence. And then this gets there really good. So AI can actually help with that as well. And by doing so, that AI can help us maybe take that information and then put into a visualization software, and we can see closer to real time what's really going on. So again, AI is going to be in security. But we can also use AI to run automated security checks of our environment. We can have AI searching for like misconfigured object storage buckets in the cloud. We can have it start scanning systems and vulnerability scanning to see, okay, this person's Windows system has this service that we don't want enabled because it adds something. Let's disable that service. We can use AI to do some scans on our Linux systems, and are they hardened properly? So AI is there as well. And AI can help with all kinds of pattern matching. It could look at the hashes on those things that are stored on the drives in an encrypted environment, and it can notify things where the hashes have changed. So the possibilities of what AI can do are really incredible, and it's exciting to see. Unfortunately, the hackers are going to use AI as well. And if you notice, you're probably getting phishing scams that look a little better. We used to get phishing scams, and they'd send you emails, and it looked like they were written by someone with a third-grade education, because English was not their primary language, so they didn't have more than a second or third grade English language to be able to write it. They were smart, educated people in another language. Like my family, we speak Greek at home, not English, but that's neither here nor there. So, you know, now AI can write some of these emails. So now you got to be trained to be able to look at what an AI phishing scam. So good for security, unfortunately good for the hackers as well. So it's going to be a war. I want to be on the right side of the war. Prepare yourself for battle to deal with the new threats. Great question, Dingleman. And I'm thrilled where you got your job after our training.
From Yoshida, thanks, Mike, for the info. Just to add on my QT above, QT above, I need to make HLD, and requirements to move one table from on-premise Oracle DB to AWS Data Lake. I created a few architectural diagrams, but confused on it.
Okay, if that's the case and you know exactly what you need to do, you're going to need to increase your knowledge on what is a data lake. And you're going to have to increase your knowledge of Oracle and what you mean by a table in Oracle. So drawing the picture is easy, but understanding what you're drawing is the issue. So I would go out there and I'd start reading some Oracle documentation to truly learn that database, to truly learn what they mean by tables inside of that database, to truly figure out what kind of normalization you're using of that database. Because if it's a real data lake, I promise you, it's going to be more than just Oracle. I love Oracle, but you know, it's not just going to be the Oracle database and nothing else. the organization is going to have object stores. That organization most likely is going to have a data warehouse. That organization most likely will have a NoSQL for unstructured data and other types of databases. So you need to find that. If you don't know that much about these databases, go learn it and go learn it fast. See if you've got a big data person on your team, or take some architecture training where we could easily teach you that, but get it from somewhere. And I'm not saying it has to be from us. You can go ask some of the big data people in your organization, but unfortunately, I can't teach you to do something which would probably take 100 hours to learn this. And it's going to take that much to truly understand what you're doing. Because there's a difference between drawing a picture and not understanding the picture, and drawing the picture and conveying information that's necessary for the managers and the other people that are going to use this information. And if you don't understand it, you're not going to be able to draw it correctly in the first place. It's one thing to do boxes. And and let me give you the examples of who can do this. So when I worked at Cisco, I would draw my architectural documents and I'd write my documents. And I'd draw them in PowerPoint, a bunch of ugly looking boxes. And then I would send it to the graphics team and I would say, redraw this. And they'd use a program called Adobe InDesign. They'd make it beautiful. Alonzo's an expert at this, and he can dress it up. But they don't know what to draw if you don't tell them, and you explicitly have to tell them. So please learn these databases, learn these tables, go into depth about what is a data lake. And you're not going to find it in the AWS documentation. You're going to have to do some serious research on understanding data lakes. Really dive into that video that Praveen said, where he talks about mapping, reduction, and normalization of the data, because you're going to need that. And in your high-level diagram, you're going to have each of these elements. How is the data transformed? How is it loaded into a new system? How is it loaded into object storage? How is the metadata going to be there? And all that's going to be there. So make sure you have the knowledge to do this. I wish I could give you this answer in a 1-hour thing, but honestly, it's going to take a lot of time to understand data. Because you're basically in the position of like, which pill do I prescribe to the patient, if a doctor would ask that? And in order to do that, the doctor not only needs to understand how to diagnose the patient, they need to understand the different types of medications, the way the different kinds of medications work in the body, and the way the different medications work in the body and its systems. Because, if you give, for example, if you've got someone with asthma and you give them a beta blocker for blood pressure, they're not going to be able to breathe in certain cases. But there's other blood pressure drugs that you could use, where normally people would just be given a beta blocker for their blood pressure. So I'm trying to use the medicine thing, but it's the same thing. To really create a real architecture document, you need to understand the tech, every element of the tech, how the tech works and how the tech interacts with other technology. What are those integration points? And how is that integration point going to be used? I hope I answered your question there.
Andy, will ESL U.S. citizen have equal opportunity to be hired as a cloud architect?
Well, Andy, I don't know what you mean by ESL. I'm going to guess you mean English as a second language. And but in general in architecture, we try not to use acronyms or in precision communication because it's an opportunity to mistake. It doesn't matter. I just spoke to somebody the other day. He's one of my students, and he's Cameroonian, and he got 9 offers. He went on 9 interviews and got 7 offers. I spoke to another person today from Togo, but he did speak very fluent English, and he just got hired as an architect. I will tell you that we've had plenty of people, and most of the people that we train, at least 50% of them that get hired, English is not as their second language. I speak Greek in the house, Andy. My wife comes home, I speak to her in Greek. So English as a second language is not a problem. Precision communication is absolutely critical. Absolutely critical. And that is totally important because you've got to be able to obtain the requirements. Now, having an accent, totally fine. In fact, it's going to be normal to have an accent in any company in any hire. Why? Let's say you're in America, right? There's 330 million American, and 30 million of them don't speak English anyway, or 40 million don't. So now you're only dealing with basically less than 300 million people that speak English. Now, if you're going to hire the best of the best, there's about 1 billion people in China. You're probably going to have someone from Chinese on your team. There's about 1 billion people in India. You're probably going to have someone Indian on your team. There's over 1 billion people in Africa. You're probably going to have an African person on your team. And I only mentioned 3 countries. And that's going to literally be, there's only 300 million Americans, and I just talked about 3 billion people, more than 3 billion people. That's 10 times the number of Americans. So in a normal team, at least the teams I've worked in, English is a second language for at least 50% of the people in tech. Hindi is a primary language for many. Mandarin is a primary language for many. French is a primary language for many. Spanish is a primary language for many. So that doesn't matter. But Andy, you will have to speak good, clean, precision English. And that is going to be important. But here's the thing. We can all learn to do it. When I go to Greece, and my wife goes to Greece, who was even born in Greece, they say, where are you from? Because we have an accent. But they still understand us because we're precision with the language. So it's not going to hold you back at all. Not one bit. You're going to be great. Just get the right skills, have the right attitude. And, Andy, if you think about it, here's what companies care about. They care about the following. Can you do the job and do it well? Now, that means if I want to hire an architect, I don't care if you're an engineer. I want to know if you can do architecture. Not car washing, not airplane flying, or engineering. It means I care if I can trust you. Because if I can't trust you, I can't hire you. So be honest in your interviews and don't lie on your resume. Simple solved. Next, they care about your energy, enthusiasm, and passion for their work. So if you show up excited, there. And if English isn't your primary language and you do a good job communicating, that shows me you're smarter than the average bear, as they used to say on Yogi Bear, because some people can barely speak one language. If you can speak more than one, that shows you who's more intelligent. And today's world, international being able to speak more than one language is a good thing. My wife speaks 3 languages. I speak 2.5. So there's that. The next thing they care about is your emotional intelligence. Will you bring out the best in others and raise the energy on the team? After that, they care if you're a good team player. And after that, they care if you're willing to go above and beyond. What they don't care about is your accent. So go out there, get the best training, work on your communication skills, work on your presentation skills, work on your sales skills, and you're going to do great in anything you desire to do.
Z Richmond. So if I have my local business and thinking to migrate my operations to the cloud, seems more like a statement, but could you clarify for Z what are some security risk concerns I can look at if I'm trying to migrate my local business operations to the cloud? And what are some strategies I can use to mitigate these security risks and concerns?
Okay, so you can't move all your operations to the cloud. Ever.
Do it.
You can't move all your operations to technology. Ever. And here's the reason why. Operations is how the business runs.
Yeah.
What are your salespeople doing? How's your product being created? How is tech support done? How is customer service? All that. That's your operations. Everything that you need to do to run the business. So the only thing you can do is you move your technology to the cloud. Now, I want you to understand, all cloud computing is taking the stuff out of your data center and moving it to the cloud. It's nothing different. So how do you mitigate these risks? The identical way you actually would mitigate the risk in any business. You look for confidentiality of the information. And how do you do that? And that's through a combination. And unfortunately, it's a 500 to 600 hour answer that you're looking for. But what you're really talking about is, how do you maintain confidentiality? Are you maintaining it by encryption of the transmissions on the wires? At the network level? Are you doing it at the application level? Are you doing it at both? Conversely, at the same time, how are you keeping people or hackers from entering the systems? Do you need next generation firewalls? Are you using firewalls and IDS IPS systems? Are you using 2 things? What are you doing on the servers to harden your servers? What unnecessary services are you disabling? What kind of anti-malware protection are you doing on it? What kind of encryption are you doing on the storage? How do you determine who your users are? Meaning authenticate them and then authorize them to allow them to do what they're allowed to do and then track and audit what they've done in the past. What type of security are you using on the operating systems and how are you hardening those operating systems? What does your security policy need to look like in terms of what's acceptable, when is acceptable, how is your technology going to be used? When your people work remote, what can they access remote? What can they access locally? So these are the kind of questions that you're really going to need to think about before you can even think about the security. I'm going to be doing some security training in June, most likely on YouTube, and we'll cover these things. But what you're actually asking is something that's going to take a long time. In fact, I just spoke to a security architect buddy of mine today. He's working for a major governmental organization. And I said, so what are you doing in your job? I knew the answer. And he says, I go to meetings, and more meetings. And for the last couple of weeks, we've been planning on just one little thing. So it's going to take time. And it could take 6 months to actually plan this, to even create the thing. So, I'll do some free cybersecurity training, or you can train with us to actually be an architect and learn everything that you need to know. But you're not going to be able to do this in a short period of time. But those are some of the things you should look at. And if the things that I'm talking about like that, like the security policy, maximum acceptable downtime, quantifying your actual risk to determine how much risk what the protections, the knowledge of whether you can accept the risk or mitigate the risk or transfer the risk to another organization with, say, an insurance policy. And if you don't know what I mean by designing demilitarized zones or host-based security and network-based security and identity and access management strategies and how you put the pieces and all together, please either hire a cybersecurity consultant, and that's going to get real expensive, or take a course and learn how to do it. But don't just move anything to the cloud. And you're not moving operations, you're just moving some technology.
Cesar. Hi, Mike. I'm currently a Azure cloud engineer and overseeing the entire cloud infrastructure environment. How can I position myself to create a cloud architecture role at my company for me to transform into? Interesting question.
Hi, Cesar. And I'm going to tell you one thing. Life is cumulative, and it's wonderful that you have engineering experience. But unfortunately, it's completely unrelated to what we do as architects. So let me give you an example. Let's say we have an airplane mechanic that is the best person in the world at making that engine work, tuning that engine, performance tuning, fixing it, repairing parts. And now I ask them to fly the airplane. What's going to happen? They're not going to know. So Cesar, I'm working with multiple cloud engineers. I got a guy, I'll call him H, he's from India, and he's been a cloud engineer for 10 years, and it's taken me a year to train him to become a cloud architect. I'm working with another gentleman named S. He's from Jamaica, living in the UK. Great guy. About 10 years cloud engineering experience, and he's been training with me for 6 months, and he's soon going to be ready. So Cesar, I want you to understand what we do as architects. We don't touch the technology. And there is a difference between knowing how to be hands-on and build the technology versus knowing how to design the technology. And I know everybody that never believes me until they understand, and I'll give you an example. How many people in this audience know how to use their computer? They know how to turn it on, use Windows, open them up like, say, Word, write an email, use a web browser. Now, how many of you truly understand that computer? How many of you truly understand how that computer works? How many of you understand the CPU? And you understand how each core on the CPU works? And you understand how the core is hyperthread, and you understand the microcode that's actually written just on the CPU itself, and the level 1, level 2, and layer 3 cache RAM, what it does. How do you guys understand what is that PCI bus and how does it work? How do those drives attach, whether they're via the PCI bus or a SATA port, and how does those interconnections work? Now, how does that NVMe storage work? How is the data written to the storage? How is it accessed? How is it staked? Versus a magnetic drive versus a traditional solid state drive. Now, while we're thinking about that, how does the operating system manage memory? How does it schedule CPU tasks? What's the difference between a single thread versus a multi-thread? How does the DRAM work? Where does it store things? How does the swap file work? How are certain tasks given priority to the CPU? How do those drivers integrate between the hardware and the software? That's the kind of knowledge you have to learn to be an architect. We're designing stuff. We're no longer building stuff. So here's what you do, and here's what I've done. You have to convince the company you're actually not an engineer. So a lot of times when I have engineers, they have to go to a new company. And what do I mean by that? The architect is a business executive. That architect is going to be in that C-suite, learning from the CEO. What are the goals and visions for the business? You're going to be there, and you're going to have to learn how to map out the business processes. You're going to learn how to build the business case. You're going to have to quantify the expected value of an opportunity. You're going to have to give presentations, and you're going to have to sell. One thing you won't be doing as an architect is coding, configuring, or touching the tech. Now, Cesar, I'd love you to sign up for the How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar, and we'll cover in Q and cover everything. And I also have a free document, How to Become a Cloud Architect. And a lot of that means you're going to have to change your brand so people see you as an architect, as an engineer. And I had to do this too when I took my first role. But I want you to understand the difference. As a cloud engineer, you're building the stuff. which is great. And now if I asked you if an organization has a weighted average cost of capital of 7.67%, how would you use that information to determine whether you should build a OpenStack cloud or Nutanix cloud versus moving to the public cloud like Azure? You're going to have to run those calculations as an architect. And if I asked you, how would you design your secure demilitarized zone for remote access for an organization that has 200,000 people? That's an architect thing. There's no building, but there's a whole lot of planning that goes in there. Or if I tell you we have 4 direct connections across 2 internet service providers connecting us with an Azure Express route, how would you load share without getting out of order packets? Because you can't create link aggregation groups across different service providers with different latencies. And you would need to understand, how you're designing and traffic engineering, building your plan for the traffic to move through your system. And if I would ask you, how would you create the security policy for an organization with 200,000 people? That's an architecture thing. So what you typically have to do is get training. And it's not training like you have. You've got more tech knowledge as a cloud engineer than the architects do. You do. You got deeper, but you'll have to learn what business problems exist, how to solve those problems, how to determine the gaps in an organization's people, processes, and technology. You'll have to think about stakeholder management, vendor management, and these things. So typically it involves retraining as an engineer because you're going to have to focus on the big picture as opposed to the tech. And here's what I did. And I'll also tell you why I created my cloud architect program. Ultimately, what got me my first engineering job was the following. My first architect job. I got hired as an engineer. I did real well. And then I saw there was a need for an architect. So I actually went to business school and started getting an MBA. I went to business school. I took sales classes. I took presentation skills classes, leadership skills classes. And then I started wearing a nice suit to work each day, made sure everything was polished. And when people ask me technical questions, I said, I don't know how to do that, but I know this great engineer, but let me go speak to the executive, find out what their things are, and then I'll find the right person. I'll get it done for you. And they went, okay, wow, okay. And that's how I ultimately transferred. I showed them that I was an executive. I started entertaining clients. I started leading. So please download that completely free guide on how to get your first architect job. My team popped it in there. But it's about rebranding yourself and retraining yourself. If a nurse wants to become a physician, that nurse may already know 60% of what that physician knows. People don't hire them without going to medical school, or they can't get licensed without it. So that's really the thing. The thing is, we have to remember that an engineer is a techie and an architect is an exec. An engineer focuses on building and performance tuning. An architecture focuses on designing and planning. The architect's going to give presentations, write thought leadership documents. So the engineer is going to build technical stuff. So it's about getting the training for a new career. And it's no big deal. You'll do it. And when you do it, you love it. I'll tell you the good news, Caesar. When I take someone that's never worked before in tech and I train them and about a year later they work as an architect, they're typically getting about $150,000 to $170,000 a year job. When I take a cloud engineer that's coming in there that's worked and they've got good, strong knowledge, and then we build up their sales skills, their leadership skills, their executive presence, their emotional intelligence, now they're getting closer to $300,000 jobs. So your experience is valid and your experience matters. And it will help you understand more technical complexity than someone that doesn't have that background. But you're gonna have to unlearn the gut instinct, which is to go and fix stuff and go touch stuff and start thinking from a high level, like you're there looking from a pie in the sky view. And then you're gonna have to get the training and you will have a career like you can't even imagine. Alonzo, how many cloud engineers have we retrained and gotten great cloud architect jobs?
We've gotten dozens, more than dozens, and they're continually riding the wave, even after we decided to not pursue the cloud engineering program further. So as of last week before last, we were getting emails, texts, and everything else about how their lives were transformed and they got the jobs that they were pursuing. So we can't keep up. But what overall, as Go Cloud Careers continues to grow and continues to expand its development programs, we are getting more and more excited about the emails and correspondence of our students who have matriculated into other roles as cloud architects. So it's possible, and there's so much to explore.
Yeah, and actually next Tuesday, unless something happens, Mr. R, I'll call him right now, who just got an incredible cloud security architect. Well, actually, he applied to be a cloud analyst, and when he interviewed, and it was his first tech job, we trained him. They said that's not good enough for you. I'd like you to to interview as a cloud security architect. And he interviewed for that, and they said, you know, R, you're better than that. I'd like you to be a security architect in the CISO's office. And this is a major
I
organization.
love it.
I love it. He's been there for like 2 weeks now. He's having a great time. I spoke to him today on my way back from PT, and I was so happy to talk to him. But I think on next Tuesday, 6 to 8, unless anything changes, we're going to bring him on. But I don't make my own calendar, believe it or not.
No, you don't. Mohammed, how will AI assist us with cloud networking or in general?
You know, Mohammed, here's the funny thing. AI doesn't seem to work very well for networking. And here's the reason why. What is most of the generative AI systems trained on? User data. So it's going to go to the Medium page that's written by somebody that knows nothing about networking, or there's a networking influencer that just got a job at Cisco, has absolutely no knowledge and makes incorrect videos every single day. It's pretty scary. I hope Cisco stops her so she doesn't actually hurt people in their careers. And there's a lot of that. So, you know, AI right now is weak on networking. It's great on code. It's great on Linux. It's great on Windows kind of stuff, but it's very weak on there. Ask a generative AI or ChatGPT or Gemini how to create a traffic engineering path for 8 ISPs, and it's not going to give you an answer that you're going to be thrilled with. So it's not going to be there. But AI at some point, especially if it's trained with good data, maybe it's trained with an organization's configurations, maybe they train it with the IETF RFCs, the specifications for all the protocols. Then you actually train AI with the IEEE specifications for things like Ethernet and everything else. Then after that, you train it with Cisco Pressbooks and Juniper Pressbooks and other credible things like the Stevens TCP/IP book. And now you start training that, and now it can spit out your configurations that can be placed in the routers. And whether that be infrastructure as code, or whether that's going to be like a traditional Cisco router, like the config-t in gigabit Ethernet 0/0, where you put an IP address and you type no shot. That kind of things, I think you can do all of that for right now if it's trained properly. But AI will assist the engineers in their job. But AI, honestly, is just another opportunity for us to sell. What do I mean by that? Oh, we've got AI. You need to improve the speeds of your network. That means bigger routers, bigger switches, bigger, 800 gigabit per second kind of connections between the switches. And now, since we're using converged storage area networks like block storage, object storage, and file storage over the network, now we're going to need bigger networks. We're going to need more QoS policy, and it's going to be lots of fun work for networking people. Plus, I think there's going to be a lot more resurgence in networking jobs. I really do. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, a lot of recent events underscore that as well. Amy. Hi, Mike. I have 5 years of cloud experience, including designing, deploying apps in the cloud, but all the applications are not large scale. I feel like I'm limiting my chances of getting cloud jobs.
Well, Amy, what's your goal? First, we need to know what your goal is. That's the first thing. Because if you want to be an architect and you're designing them, it's one set of training. If you want to be that technical engineer, which you're doing now, where you're doing a little design on the tech perspective and they're there, you don't have to design something small at work to get there. Here's what I like to tell people. It's not your experience that gets you hired. It isn't. It's your knowledge. It's your competency. It's your brand. Al Legister was a student of mine. Never worked in tech, but Deloitte hired him as a senior solution architect as his first tech job. I'm bringing that up because it's a senior architect. We don't get people hired as associate architects, which are trainees. We get people hired as architects and they've never worked before. Daniel Bosu didn't graduate high school, but JP Morgan Chase hired them. Wallace Agana was a sales rep and got hired straight as an enterprise architect at JP Morgan Chase after we trained him. I'm telling you why this in a minute. Balwinder was a stay-at-home mom before Microsoft hired her as a cloud solution architect. Ivan Tamba, Jordan Kitko, and I'm drawing a Coyote. All were hired by AWS as solutions architects as their first job. And of course, I've got people like Pritipal St. John who were working in tech when a role like you had, and we got them hired as an enterprise architect with a great job. It doesn't matter what you're doing now. It matters what your knowledge is. So, Amy, I'm going to ask you this question. What are you doing to improve your communication skills? Because to get a bigger job and earn more, that matters. What are you doing to improve your executive presence so people can see you and feel you when you walk in the room? Watch. Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Gibbs, cloud architect. Nobody's taking me seriously. That's going to affect my salary by a good $200,000 a year. But now, hi, I'm Mike Gibbs. I'm an architect with 25 years experience. It's not even my experience, but you felt me because I turned on executive presence. So that's going to help you. How many books do you read each week? I'm not joking. What is it you're reading? And it needs to be based upon your goals. So if your goal is to be an architect, are you reading books on finance? Are you reading books on sales? Are you reading books on operations? Are you reading books on business process reengineering? Or you could train with us and we'll teach you everything you need to know in one platform. But what are you doing there? Now, also, who says you only have to do the stuff that you do at work? What kind of cool projects, if you're not doing enough at work, do you want to do to build up your knowledge that you can build a portfolio of? If you're an engineer, go build stuff. If you're an architect, now, what are you doing to build your brand? You've got 5 years of cloud experience. What are you teaching people somewhere? Or creating content so other people can see your knowledge? Are you creating thoughtful documents that talk about a challenge and how you solve that? You do that, the world will come to you. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're doing. And, I actually look to hire people for the cloud that worked off of the cloud, not on the cloud. And here's the reason why. When I hire someone from the cloud, typically they don't I look for people that have networking and data center knowledge. And if they also know the cloud, that's great. But I don't look for people that just went and got cloud stuff. Because if they just went on the cloud and they didn't learn about virtual machines and they don't know about hypervisors and they don't understand about storage performance and things like that, they're a lot harder. So get yourself hands-on in whatever it is you want. Hands-on for an architect is design, present, and sell. Hands-on for an engineer is build. So what's your goal? Tell us your goal. And after that, I can give you more prescriptive guidance, but I really need to know your goal, and here's why. If you want to get to Bangalore, you take one plane or set of planes. If you want to go to Dubai, you take another set of planes. And if you want to go to Palm Beach, Florida, and really enjoy the sun and fun, it's a different airplane. And it's the same thing with your career. An architect and an engineer honestly have almost nothing in common. They really don't. A software developer and an architect have nothing in common. A sales rep and an architect have a lot in common. A project manager and a sales rep have a little bit in common. So once we need to know your goal, and if you give me your goal, I'll get you there. And I really want to get you there. But what I gave you is generic and guidance that'll work for most things.
From Jericho, what is the difference between a cloud architect and an AI cloud architect, Mike?
Jericho, it's a great question. So I want you to think of it this way. At the top of all the architects, we're going to have a chief architect, or, wow, that's weird, or we're going to have a enterprise architect. That person focuses on this entire strategy. That person is so far away from the tech at that point, they're a business executive in a suit. And they're meeting with executives all day long, and they're actually then, dealing with the technology professionals. They're sort of that liaison. Underneath that person, you're going to have a cloud architect. The cloud architect is a generic architect that's going to focus on the cloud. And what is the cloud? It is either a private cloud, such as Nutanix or OpenStack that the organization runs in the data center, or it is a public cloud like AWS, Azure, Google, HP, Alibaba, Oracle, or anybody else you want, because everybody's got a cloud, and clouds have been around for a long time. Or in most cases, it's going to be a hybrid cloud or a hybrid multi-cloud, which is data center plus 1 to 2 clouds. That's pretty normal. In fact, 98% of organizations do that. So at the top, you'll have your enterprise architect, then you'll have your cloud architect, which is an architect generalist. And underneath that architect in every architecture, you'll have your specialty architects. An AI architect, a network architect, a security architect, and other people that focuses on. So you can think of the cloud architect as somebody that focuses on everything, the cloud, the network, and the data center, and all how it ties together from a high level. And they're going to design stuff. And the AI architect is just going to focus on AI for business transformation. So that means they'll be thinking of how AI can help assist the organization's people, the organization's processes, and what kind of technology can be used to improve business performance. So security architect focuses on just security and how that helps the business. AI focuses on just AI and the business. Now, we have a how to get your first generative AI architect webinar tomorrow. Please come. It's going to be me and David Lithicum. We almost have 60 years together working in AI systems. Well, that's not true. I first worked on an AI system in 2000. David started working on AI systems in the 80s. He even ended up working at NASA because of his AI architecture experience at one point in his career, and he's awesome with that. So that's the difference. Do you focus on just AI, or do you focus on everything? As you focus on everything, you have to become more generic because your focus is higher level. As you focus on the specialty, you can zero in a little more on what you're doing.
From Simon, if clients want to use a SASE solution, how can a cloud architect show more competency than a solution architect?
Well, Simon, in this case, the solution architect's probably going to show more competency. And here's what I mean by that. A solution architect is someone that works for an organization and designs, presents, and sells a very specific solution for them. So if I work at Cisco and I'm a solution architect to sell routers, designing routing, I'm going to know more than the generic cloud architect that has to know the network, the data center, a little AI, a little databases, a little bit about storage, a little bit about security and everything. So if I work at Versa Networks and they're a great SASE provider, they're going to know far more about SASE than the average architect at Cisco, because Cisco focuses on a whole bunch of things and Versa Networks only focuses on SASE. So a solution architect at Versa Networks, and there's other SASE providers, Zscaler is a great SASE provider, is going to know more than, in most cases, than there. But how do you get competent and how do you show your competency? You go out there and you learn. If I wanted to really learn SASE, I would do everything. First is I would get down and dirty and deep in software-defined networking, because software-defined networking, specifically SD-WAN, is a big component of SASE. So I'd get real good and strong on that. Now, after I got good and strong on software-defined networking, then I'd learn SASE frameworks. I'd read all about SASE. I'd look at some SASE leaders, such as, say, Palo Alto and Zscaler. I'd look into Aviatrix and their solution because it's kind of SASE-like. I'd look into Versa Networks. I'd look into all the SASE providers. Then I would read any specifications, if possible, that you can find it. I'd dive deep on the security frameworks, and I'd probably read 10,000 pages on SASE long before I'd ever be willing to have a conversation on someone to try and look like I know SASE as much as a SASE solution architect would. And even still, if you do all that, the SASE solution architect that works at a SASE organization and they do nothing other than SASE is almost always going to have more competency than a cloud architect that's focusing on some SASE stuff, some traditional networking stuff, security stuff, big data stuff, AI stuff, servers and server virtualization, containers and container orchestration, storage area networks, business applications, whether they be unified communications, CRM systems, etc., etc., etc. And then, business process reengineering, all that. The cloud architect's got to focus on all of that. That solution architect is focused on SASE. So in this case, the solution architect will know much more.
Back to Simon. Last time you asked Mark about how to choose between ISIS and OSPF, his answer seemed a bit too technical. What kind of response would be more appropriate for an architect?
Simon, the answer that Mark gave me was completely appropriate, and I wouldn't change a thing. Maybe I'd add a little more executive presence to it, but he was talking about trade-offs. If I do single area ISIS, it's probably going to scale better than single area OSPF. But he talked about finding, do we have the people that can support that ISIS? Are they going to understand CLNS routing? Are they going to understand how to performance tune it? And that was a perfectly good answer for a network architect. That's exactly what I would expect to get. It wasn't too deep at all. He didn't get into tech weeds. He didn't mention configuration commands. That's what I would expect to get. And that's kind of like a minimum level depth. So no, I was actually very pleased with the way Mark answered that question. And I would answer something fairly similar. So if you've got some career questions, ask them now. Otherwise, Alonzo and I have got a lot of stuff we need to do in the background. I know I've got some content curation. I'm working on another boot camp that I'm working on. So if you've got questions, I want to ask them. I really do. In the meantime, please join us on the generative AI information webinar tomorrow. It's going to be a great time. David Lithicum will be there. I'll be there. We'll talk for about 30 minutes. You can ask your questions. We could potentially assess your strengths and weaknesses on certain things, which I'm always happy to do. We will talk about the career. We will talk about what we do. We will talk about the skills that hiring managers need, what hiring managers are looking for on an interview. And David is going to dive deep into the things that are components of that program and the skills that you actually need. And I am totally excited about it. Thrilled about it. We're already signing up people left and right for it because we're offering it at 50% off as the pre-launch, since not the entire syllabus isn't completely there yet, and we always do that with pre-launches. So it's going to be the opportunity of a lifetime. And if there's no other questions, well, here's the thing. Join us tomorrow in the completely free How to Get Your First AI Architect Job. Download the How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job career guide. And look forward to seeing you on the webinar tomorrow. Take care, everyone.
Thanks for joining us. See you tomorrow.